District of Conservation is sponsored by the Committee for a Constructive Tomorrow, better known as CFACT. To learn more about our sponsor, head over to cfact.org. Thanks for listening to the program.
Greetings from my tub. I'm in here getting 5% cash back when I pay in full with PayPal. No fees, no interest. Make the most of your money this holiday with PayPal. Save the offer in the app.
Ends 12/31. See paypal.com/promo terms. Points can be redeemed for cash and more. Paying for subject to terms and approval. PayPal link at NMLS 910457.
Shopping is hard, right? But I found a better way. Stitch Fix online personal styling makes it easy. I just give my stylist my size, style, and budget preferences. I order boxes when I want and how I want. No subscription required. And he sends just for me pieces, plus outfit recommendations and styling tips. I keep what works and send back the rest. It's so easy. Make style easy. Get started today at stitchfix.com/Spotify. That's stitchfix.com/Spotify.
Welcome to District of Conservation. I'm your host, Gabriella Hoffman. This podcast offers a sober examination into all things hunting, fishing, shooting sports, energy, environment, and the public policy surrounding it. And this podcast also specializes in original interviews that you won't hear elsewhere. Here's what I have for you today. Joining me on the program today is Travis Fisher from the Cato Institute. Travis, thank you so much for joining. I'm delighted to have you here on the podcast finally.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You're one of the go-to people I like to talk to in our space with energy policy. I've cited your excellent IRA subsidies report. I've had your colleague Josh Laux on the program as well. And I figured it was wonderful timing to have you on and pick your brain about certain things. Travis, talk more about what you do at the Cato Institute in terms of your energy policy.
Well, I try to cover all of the ground, which is a lot. As you know, there's a lot of fast-moving policy issues right now. My area of expertise is really the electricity grid and the federal side of it. But I also try to cover state policies. I'm getting into the permitting reform debate at the federal level in Congress right now. We try to just cover everything that is worth covering, that's an open question, of course. But yeah, it's right now. It's pretty much just me. I am hiring an RA, by the way. But so I cover as much as I possibly can, which is right now that feels impossible.
It does. And it's an exciting time. We were talking about this before going on the air, that people are starting to care about energy, electricity, the grid. And I want to ask your comments on this interesting transition we're seeing away from climate alarmism, this energy scarcity mindset, to that of abundance. What is your read into that? Why is everyone starting to, I guess, change their tune? I think the most recent example is Bill Gates, the biggest disavowal, I think, of this yet.
I welcome it. I mean, I have always had the abundance mindset, and I should give a nod to my colleague, Marian Tupy, who wrote the book Superabundance with Gail Pooley. And so that approach really, from my perspective, because I think that word abundance could mean just about anything to anyone. So the flavor I like to add to it is, like, we've never been in a posture where we're going to run out of things. As long as we have the freedom to innovate, we will not run out of anything. And that was an insight offered by Julian Simon a long time ago. So I think the folks who really understand Julian Simon and Marian's books and have followed this, we've been here the whole time. So I fully welcome, especially the left side of the political spectrum, figuring out that, hey, we don't need to have a scarcity mindset. And I think that's amazing.
I don't know if you got to read the post from Bill Gates, but it was very fascinating that now he says, like, climate advocacy has to be on par with human flourishing. And that's what your colleagues at Cato had talked about. And even Julian Simon, that you don't have to put those two interests against each other, and that energy policy that favors human flourishing is one that will do best and succeed.
Yeah, and the Cato project that Marian is on is called humanprogress.org. I mean, human progress was always the goal for us. It's nice to see Bill Gates acknowledge that. And I think, to give him some credit, I think even his climate work, in his case, I think it was always pretty human focused. What I've seen from others, though, is that it's climate mitigation at all costs, including human costs. And there I think still is the sort of degrowth wing of folks on the left who think, like, we're doing damage to the earth just by being here. That, I think, hopefully is on its way out. And it's really encouraging to see someone as prominent as Bill Gates do this sort of, I don't know. It's an overt. It's a pivot. It's a very hard pivot from what his priorities have been in the past. And I think he's just saying out loud the things that we've all acknowledged for a very long time. And I did get the chance to read that Gates Notes article, and to me, it seemed like maybe he's starting to listen to Chris Wright and others who have taken this pro-human posture. And the way Chris Wright talks about it is net zero is the wrong goal. Net zero CO2 emissions is actually an anti-human goal. And what we should be focused on instead is zero energy poverty globally. And that is pretty much where Bill Gates is now, which is, I think this is just an amazing turn of events.
Which makes the reconsideration of the 2009 endangerment finding and everyone being so uproarious and angry about Department of Energy putting out a study that said exactly what you're talking about now, this overemphasis on decarbonization, climate first. Perhaps it now vindicates the authors and Secretary Wright now.
I certainly think it does. And, that group of authors has been unfairly demonized for a very long time. And, it really does get to this idea that there might be some gatekeepers at the academic level that just don't want, the gravy train to dry up. And that's, I think, I used to be very skeptical of that argument that, hey, it's just the funding and these people are corrupt. I don't think that explains everything, but I think it does go a pretty long way to explaining why there's such, an apparatus to keep, the climate status quo, which probably until Gates came out of the closet with it was, you can't question it. It is an unassailable fact that climate change is destroying humanity, and we have to do anything at all costs to combat it. That was never really, the climate middle was never a safe place. You couldn't say, yeah, I acknowledge greenhouse gas effect, global warming, temperatures are going up. There's certain things we need to watch, pH of the oceans, all of that stuff. But it's not a catastrophe. And to say that out loud would get you demonized. And now I think it's finally safe to say that out loud. And that's a much better place to be.
And going back to electricity costs and more so of your specialty, I think this also segues into it because so much of energy policy, especially the last 4 years, as we have all observed in our public policy space, it was too emphasized on renewables only, which they think or thought was going to be the answer to decarbonization, solar and wind, 100%, batteries, EVs, and the like. And we have observed, I know you have as well, that with rising electricity demand, a lot of these so-called future sources can't meet that demand and, in fact, perhaps undermine already aging grids and the like. And that's why we're seeing rising electricity rates and higher prices. But I want you to help demystify, as someone who focuses exclusively on this, you're one of the best experts, in my opinion, on this. What is explaining why we're seeing higher electricity rates? This electricity demand is because of this premature closure of reliable power plants, this insistence to go net zero. What is explaining it? And is it the fault of the president and his administration? Because we saw Rahm Emanuel make an argument in Wall Street Journal about that. So deconstruct for us, why are we seeing this and what is explaining the actual increase in prices?
So I'll start with the short answer, which is that Rahm Emanuel is not making any sense. He's basically blaming the expiration of the Inflation Reduction Act tax credits, and they still haven't really expired yet. I mean, those are set to expire now, thank God, but you can't blame something that's only going to occur in the future for things that are already happening now. So that's a non-starter. He is an opportunist, and I can't blame him for taking his shot on that one, I guess. In fact, isn't he the one who famously said, you shouldn't let a crisis go to waste? We have an electricity price crisis, and we might have a reliability crisis. Those things are on the horizon now, but I think it's obviously not what this president is doing. There's a lot more to do with what past administrations have done and state level policy. So the two main things that I pointed out, so on top of the subsidies, which are less of an issue now because they have been, for the most part, phased out or curtailed. What I really want to focus on is this idea that we should mandate specific resources. States are really bad about this. There were, I think, at one point, 30 states that had a renewable portfolio standard, meaning they wanted X percent of their grid energy to come from either wind or solar, or you can get really specific. Unfortunately, my home state of North Carolina had a carve out for poultry and hog waste. This is it's like pure politics. So you of course, states are within their right to do that. It's just bad policy. And it's always been something like 20 something or 30 states have done this. Where those policies bind, you're going to see costs only go up. And that was reflected in a report by Berkeley Lab that just came out that said, look, it's not renewables per se, it's the policies that force them where they wouldn't come on the grid otherwise. And that is a key distinction, because I'm not anti-renewable, I'm anti-mandate, anti-subsidy. The other thing that I point to as a key driver, this is a thing that not a whole lot of people talk about, and I don't know why. The Environmental Protection Agency had rules on the books for multiple years, and they took 2 stabs at this. They called it the Clean Power Plan when it was Obama's rule, and they called it something like a 27-word title that I just called Clean Power Plan 2.0 for shorthand under Biden. And in both cases, it was just they were trying to shut down fossil fueled power plants, mostly coal on the first pass, but it actually made it really, really hard to build new gas plants, which is, I think, one of the prominent resources that we would be building now if we had only kept it legal all along. So with that rule gone, I think the stage is set for a build out of, probably wind and solar and batteries and gas, maybe new nukes, all of this stuff. But the fundamental driver is we had supply constraints, both on the state level mandates and EPA.
Which is explaining why so many states are now having to import electricity. Why states like New Jersey, in addition to, I believe they have a renewable portfolio standard in Jersey, but they have their own Green New Deals. Like we see states also with these added Green New Deals to pivot, kind of like what Joe Biden had adopted and forced and mandated, kind of economy-wide, whole of government-wide too. I've noticed a correlation in states where they have similar to that, like in Virginia and elsewhere, that costs tend to be a lot more expensive, unfortunately. And you're right about renewable portfolio standards. I think there was a study, I can't recall the exact institution, but in my report that I did, I put the stat that I think states with those standards have 11% higher, 11% more increased costs in terms of electricity costs. So electricity is more expensive in states where these renewable portfolio standards have been adopted too. So it's not by accident that this is happening. But even, I think also you've probably heard the argument that AI data centers are what are bringing this increase in electricity prices on top of this rising demand. And something you've been working on that I think is going to catch on more is consumer regulated electricity. I want you to speak to this. What does it mean? Kind of break it down very simply for the audience, and then talk about a case study in New Hampshire where this is already starting to play out. But do you think this type of reform could help address the problem with, let's say, the proliferation of AI data centers, load from the grid, making sure that consumers are not having to pay for the misgivings of certain companies if the project never comes online? So what exactly is this? And is this the solution to our problem with rising demand?
It's definitely one of the best solutions that I've been able to come up with. I'm certainly open-minded about other answers to the problem. Essentially what it does is it takes this utility monopoly model, which in almost every state, the incumbent utility has the obligation to serve anyone who shows up and has basically load to serve. So if you're a new manufacturing plant, a data center, historically that was an easier task. It was something like, well, our population is going to grow slowly, so we have to meet that new demand. We're in a new era. We're in an era where a data center can show up and could by itself possibly even like double the utility's service amount in terms of like total watts being served. They're showing up, sometimes they're drawing power the size of like what a nuclear power plant would put on the grid, like a gigawatt scale. So we're in a new world where utilities are struggling to serve that, and there's only a handful of answers, and I don't like many of them, about what to do about that. And it is ultimately a state level issue because states have jurisdiction over the generation fleet and usually have the regulatory authority over the load serving entity, which is basically the utility that you pay your bill to. So these are the retail utilities, and they are struggling right now. One thing they've done is they've gone to state houses and said, if we can put all the new stuff in our rate base, if we'll build it, you just need to give us a sweet return for it, and maybe even accelerate some stuff, get some special sweeteners. Some states are doing that. That's going to be very expensive, and everyone's rates are going to go up. And I think people would be rightly concerned that the AI surge is causing that. Now, that's one option. the other option, which I also hate, is just to ban the new load. So you're saying we don't like data centers. This is a whole new category of thing. We're sensitive to it. We're scared of it. Let's just ban it. I don't like either of those options. If you want to accommodate the new load, so if you want to basically say we will allow you to be in our state for sure, but you don't want that cost impact. You don't want the spillover. You don't want the grid to get any weaker, and you don't want the electricity that your residents pay. So as a politician, you're obviously going to be very sensitive to that. You don't want the mobs with pitchforks coming after you. I think the only answer is to let the new load go off grid, and to say, if you do that, if you basically build your own system, we won't regulate you at all. I really don't think there's any need for a state regulator to get in between, a multi-billion-dollar transaction between company A and company B when they both have armies of lawyers. So you basically have revisited the utility compact, which of course was utility, you get a service territory, but you have to serve everyone. Utilities are no longer able to serve everyone because of the new demand that's showing up. So I think they should, this is the opposite side of the coin, they should probably lose the franchise to be the only utility that can serve them. So it basically opens up the market to a new unregulated utility that we don't even know what that might look like. The state of New Hampshire, as you brought up, did pass the law that would enable that. Of course, one key issue with New Hampshire is all of New England is basically starved of energy. I'm not sure where, if you wanted to build a new gas plant, I'm not sure where you get the gas resource from. You can't really build pipelines there. Hopefully that is being resolved too. But I'd like to see it happen in a bunch of states, and I'd like to see exactly what it looks like. It's more of an open-ended thing, and it's not usually comfortable for a politician to say, I'm just going to pass a law, and I'm not sure what the result is going to be. But I can say in the worst case, nothing happens. In the best case, you've invented a whole new industry that will thrive.
And it needs innovation and competition, because I think that's largely what we have seen with monopolies on the utility side of things and the operator side of things too. Even with, I would say, wager to say you're far more knowledgeable on this than I am, and a lot of us. And so that's why I'm glad you talked about this. But speak more broadly to what happened in New Hampshire. You wrote a piece in the Wall Street Journal on this. This is what really piqued my interest, and I've reached out to you to learn more about this, because I think this is definitely a solution to this incoming, situation that we have. So what happened in New Hampshire, and why do you think it's going to perhaps catch on in different states?
Well, the short version is we got lucky. We've been talking about this idea. So between me and my colleague, Glenn Lyons, who is retired, but I call him retired and extremely dangerous. He's on the red team. He's doing a lot of work behind the scenes on this. And we did an interview with someone, and it ended up on their Substack. And this is sort of the beauty of this new media environment, is you don't know where this stuff is going to end up. One of the representatives on the House side in New Hampshire just read the interview and said, I'm intrigued by this idea. Let's talk about it. We met with him about 30 minutes into that conversation. He said, you know what, I'm going to sponsor a bill that does this. And it was as simple as that. It passed the House with flying colors. He was able to gather 10 other co-sponsors. It received an amendment on the Senate side, and then the governor signed it in August, and it all happened pretty fast. So it's law now in New Hampshire, and it's an open question as to what resource might be the one to fill that gap. One really interesting thing is if we do get progress on especially small modular reactors, I think that would be a good pairing with this policy setup. You would need something that's probably going to be pretty energy dense, especially in a state like New Hampshire, and especially if you're not allowed to cross rights of way like roads and things like that. These are going to be geographically pretty small grids, but I think in terms of energy, they could be pretty large. So we'll see where that goes. I think it's going to take not just the legal change, which we already have, but some technology changes, and we'll see where those go. Some folks are very optimistic about solar and battery off-grid systems, or solar plus battery with you're actually using gas or diesel as a backup, and not calling it a backup, but running it all the time, but actually using it as a backup. All of those sort of technology combinations are on the table. And that's why I think it's exciting from the point of view of where it could go in other states, because it's not a red state issue. I think we got lucky in New Hampshire because of, free state project type thinking there. And I tend to agree with those folks, but then it's also getting traction in blue states. There was a bill that was essentially a copy of the New Hampshire bill that was introduced in Illinois. And I didn't see that coming. Wouldn't have suspected Illinois would be the first to sort of adopt my policy ideas. But I think it's going to show up in a bunch of states, and I don't know where or when, but I think it's the kind of idea that because it's zero cost, like literally zero cost, all you lose is the opportunity cost of passing a bill. It's like an economic development tool that doesn't cost you any money. You just have to carve out this place where folks can build their own grid and do whatever they want on it. That I think is a powerful tool, because I think most states are trying to figure out how to stay on budget, but how to incentivize the economic development that they need, especially to help meet their budgets in the future. And I think in a lot of cases, a large, either it's, whether it's a manufacturing hub or, AI centers, things like that, that's a very good potential for a tax base. So I could see it happening in a lot of states, and I'm curious to see where it goes exactly, but we're making good progress.
I think 2026 is going to be a big year for that. And touching on this in terms of scaling up more, abundant, reliable, secure sources, the Department of Energy announced its fusion commercialization plan. Do you think in the future, I know it's probably like 15 years away from full, realization, maybe sooner, given how innovative we are, but it's about probably 7 to 15 years away. But do you think something like a fusion plant could help, with this demand issue, and then also like incorporate itself into a CRE model?
We'll see. I mean, there's only one way to find out, which is, you build the space for this stuff to flourish or not, and then just it would have to pass the market test. That's an open question for all of these technologies. And, I'll just note, it's not just a matter of like fission versus fusion. Like each of those has dozens of different sort of types of designs. So I don't know what's going to win. I would be hard pressed to imagine a world where none of them take off. So I do think there's going to be a breakthrough somewhere. If I could predict it, I would probably be investing in that company instead of talking about it. But I'm certain of it, that there's going to be some kind of breakthrough. And it's not even just on the nuclear side. The broader technology picture looks very interesting. Thinking about very deep geothermal, and sort of the cross application of oil and gas technologies and geothermal, all sorts of very interesting stuff going on right now. And it's a good time to be in this policy space.
What haven't we touched upon that you would like to perhaps round up the conversation with? Like anything else that's exciting in, the politics of the electric grid or something like that we haven't touched on yet?
Well, I want to, yes, I want to touch on one area that I'm optimistic about. And
please.
It's interesting because I guess I have to give President Trump some credit here. The fact that he has gone around canceling projects at the executive branch level is it's causing a lot of pearl clutching. I'm sure you've seen that.
Yes.
Offshore wind stuff, the solar
it's beautiful
farms. So he is inflicting the pain on the political left that has been vice versa for a very long time. I mean, you think about Keystone XL, Obama, and then Biden, they both did it. The LNG export pause. There's a lot of shenanigans, I would say, at the executive branch level when it comes to canceling projects, or just on a whim, you're just going to cancel, a longstanding paradigm of like, well, we export LNG now. That's what we do, right? Why would we pause that? That's crazy. But the fact that Trump has basically held up that mirror and shown them what they've been doing to us for so long, it's fascinating now, because I think a lot of people are coming to the table and saying, this is not right. And of course, I agree with them. But what that has done is it's motivated people to get into a bipartisan posture on permitting reform.
Yes.
And that is a really interesting thing, especially because at the same time, we have the technologies themselves being a lot more cost competitive. So everything from solar to batteries to all of that stuff, that I think brings a new life to the debate. And it's not a matter of like trying to cancel the other person's favorite energy projects, which seems like that's the status quo we're in right now. Nobody really likes that. So I'm optimistic that the federal permitting reform debate in Congress will actually be productive this time. Time will tell. But I think as long as folks on the right side of the spectrum can stomach some degree of transmission reform, and folks on the left can get over this idea that, and
a new mine or a new energy project.
Huge credit to Bill Gates for changing the conversation, and also to Chris Wright for being the tip of the spear on this. But the folks who are dug in on this idea that no new fossil infrastructure should be built anywhere at any time, that is ridiculous. I think people are finally seeing how ridiculous that is. And again, it's the AI load crunch that is actually shining a light on how insane that was. Like we absolutely need gas to meet that load. So that, I think, all of that combined, this is a really interesting time to get some positive reforms on permitting.
AI kind of brought a death knell to net zero. I'm grateful for it in that capacity. And I know we're going to debate, water usage, electricity. And I have some advisors who advise my organization that tell me, like, we actually have a lot of very interesting data. There's a little bit of misinformation. So I think we're even going to have an answer to this question about fears of this. Like, is everything a big, large scale data center? Are there micro data centers? There is that conversation there. So it's something we'll have to coexist with. I'd rather coexist with AI than net zero.
Exactly.
And so, Travis, if anyone wants to follow you, I've alluded to your past subsidy report. Do you have any more reports coming out soon that people should be looking out for? Or do you want to refer people back to just your byline at Cato and encourage them to read your stuff on CREs and everything you're working on?
Yeah, find my work on the Cato website. My Substack is called The Fish Tank.
Yes.
And of course, I'm active on Twitter, for better or worse. One thing that I am doing right now is putting a more formal twist on the CRE concept. So I'll be publishing a policy brief soon on that, and we are going to be active at the state level in pushing that. So keep an eye on that, and we might even come to your state. And if folks are hearing this for the first time thinking, man, actual market competition in electricity, I want that in my state, please contact me. I'll go ahead and give folks my email, tfisher@cato.org. You can reach out anytime.
Perfect. This was wonderful. Such an exciting thing with CREs, especially. I'm honored to work alongside you in our big coalition of people, free market-minded environmentalists and energy folks. So, Travis, thank you again, and come back on anytime. You're more than always welcome to come.
It's great to be with you. Thank you so much.
If you enjoyed this installment of District of Conservation, I would love to know your feedback. Send it my way. Please be sure to leave us reviews on Apple, Spotify, or wherever podcasts are played, and also check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter to never miss a beat nor a guest announcement. Thanks so much for listening to District of Conservation. I hope you have a wonderful day, and please share the podcast to those who may be interested in learning more about these critical natural resources, environment, energy issues.